Being in high school has always been a great time. There was a lot of fun, making new friends, but there was only a couple of times when we were having some bad times. One time we had this drunk old homeless man walking in the high school demanded everyone to leave his house. Yeah, you heard me right. He thought that the high school was his private home and that we had invaded his personal home. But luckily though, he was arrested. Even though this story is not about him, but I just want to make one statement that were what me and my fellow classmates went through one time, just to be give a reference. But this is a story about something else. This is about a former teacher. My name is Laura. I'm currently 23 years old and I'm currently in college. And I will be telling you about this particular former teacher that creeped me and many other girls out. The story is about one particular teacher, Mr. Jameson. Mr. Jameson was a math teacher at the high school at the time. He was well liked and respected by both teachers and students. And since when I first started this high school, I heard some very positive things about Mr. Jameson, about his teaching classes would be a little bit different. He always helped the students, and I was at the time even struggling with math, but I'm now having a very much no problem with it. But at the time, I was struggling with math so much, and when we had a first test in math, I was quite nervous of being failing this one. Normally, I get probably a B or C, but I was worried that I was getting an F, which were the failing type. Even though my parents wouldn't be much upset if I got an F or something, but if I get a D, well, they know that I struggle with math. But after the first test, I did end up having a D. And Mr. Jameson told me after class that he did notice that I have been struggling with math and suggested that I should stay behind sometimes so that he could help me personally. I heard that he usually helped other students with math they're struggling with, so I told him, yeah, I can do that. So after school was over for the day, I went back to his classroom where he was waiting for me, and yeah, he literally did help me. And while we were having our private classes together, he started to ask me some questions. At first, it was just completely harmless. I mean, he did ask me about my personal hobbies and what I like to do with my friends, and just normally some questions that which I at the time didn't felt any intrusive because he stayed away from too personal questions though. He just wanted to know me more, like my hobbies, what I like to do, and just like to just to get to know me some of his students. When I did ask some of my friends like Katie, which is my best friend, and she told me that he had done this before to other students, and it's as a way to bond with them and get to know his students better, so they can feel comfortable and don't have to feel nervous or scared. And I did mention this to my parents, and they know since I do struggle sometimes with math, and what my math teacher had offered me to help me with it. And at first, my parents was not against it, but much later on, they regret I did. So for next several weeks in the year, I was have no problem. I mean, my math skills were at the time was not so good. But as for my test, it went from a D to a B. Eventually, near almost mid of the semester of the year, I had managed to get at least a B. And seeing this from my parents' reactions when I came home one day with a test saying I actually had a B minus, they saw how much improvement I had done. For usually I get either a D or C, but a B, or even if it's a B minus or B plus, they were actually improved. I had improved my skills in math and I started to love it. And my parents hoped me that I eventually would get an A. That was actually my next step, hopefully for by the end of the year to have at least one A. And if I would just manage to get one single A, I would have been proud. And even though this is not relevant, I usually get a lot of A's by now, and B's, but at the time I was excited and hopefully to get one A. But one afternoon after school was over, I actually was going to have a class with Mr. Jameson in the classroom. When I actually walked by the door, I did notice there was another girl in there, and I immediately recognized her. And that was Cassie. She was around the same age as me, and I found out from much later on that Cassie was actually one of the students that also had a bit sometimes trouble with math. But when I was standing by the door, I didn't expect to see this. But Mr. Jameson stood behind Cassie, and sometimes he do that when I was also having math. He just stood behind me and just told me what was wrong and what was good being the correct answer. But this time it was a little bit different. He was actually holding her shoulders with both hands and rubbing her shoulders, and for some reason I could see that she felt uncomfortable. And even though that he didn't notice me at the window by the door, I was peeking around just around the corner so that he would see me. And just seeing how much he doing this, and he'd even rub her shoulders and her arms, and even somehow whispered something to her, I saw that she was feeling more and more uncomfortable. I was getting a little bit nervous about this. I don't know how he would react if I even have just walked in or even knocked on a door, pretending as nothing had happened. Cassie would have just stood up and left the classroom almost normally and act normal. But for some reason I didn't. Instead, I turned around in the hallway and left the school entirely. But the next day, when I went to math class, Mr. Jameson asked me why I didn't show up. I came up with pretty much a good lie at the time, told him that I wasn't feeling well and decided to go home and to rest. But I will be there after school was over. And he nodded. And even though I saw Cassie in the hallways afterwards, I wished I just could walk up to her and talk to her about this. But even if I did, I don't know if she would have denied if anything had happened. So the only person I could to discuss this were with Katie. Luckily though, Katie was not one of his students that he helped at the school was over. She told me that Cassie did look a little bit uncomfortable when she is either in the classes or even when she saw him. Even when she also had asked her. But Cassie saying always that there's nothing wrong, she's just feeling a bit tired, that's all. But both me and Katie realized that was just a lie. Because we couldn't just go telling another teacher or either the principal about this. It's even just one girl. But anyways, I put this behind me and went to class as normal. But this time things start to act a little bit different. Normally he just either stood by next to my desk or even at his own desk, and when I need help I just call for his help. But this time he stood behind me. Well, like I said before, it happened that he did stand behind my back, but this time he started rubbing my shoulders and my arms and whispered some things in my ears, at least in one of my ears. And let's say it's some things I prefer not want to mention exactly. It's not as a good thing. Even though I still remember most of those words that he said, But he said that I was looking very cute and that I looked very much mature for my age. And he even asked if I had a boyfriend, which I told him that I wasn't dating anyone and I wasn't even considered dating at the time either because I wanted to focus on my classes. So, but some reason that actually must have felt very happy to him, knowing that if I wasn't taken, but he continued to do this for next several times into that week. And he even one time asked me afterwards before he just left if I was willing to have another extra session of math at his own home. I was like, that is a little bit strange for a teacher to ask one of his students to come over to his house for another math class. I told him I wasn't sure about that if that was a good idea. He assured me there was nothing wrong with it. He had done it a couple of times with some other students, and well, I told him I will think about it. He nodded, and he left. And I left the classroom. And luckily, though, that was the Friday. So that weekend, I had a lot of thoughts about this suggestion of studying it at his place. I know that he was a single man. He wasn't married or even have any partner or anything. And that particular weekend, I told Katie and David, another friend of mine who eventually became my boyfriend, during that same year. We were at the park and I told them about Mr. Jameson's idea of studying at his place. And this was also not the first time that David was even aware of Mr. Jameson's strange behavior. And in fact, he was stunned and angry when he found out also that Cassie also had been doing this too. So he did like, if this happened to Cassie and you, how many other girls had this been happening to? And how many girls has he been doing this to ever since he became a teacher? That's another question that I even asked myself. Like, how many students had he been doing this to? Could have been multiple students, and many of them might have been have been feeling so uncomfortable, so scared that they didn't even told anyone. So I wanted to have this to stop, but we can't just do this without any evidence. So we decided to have this recorded. So Katie decided she would stay behind the school the next Monday so that she could record this happening. So when Monday came, after school was over, I went back to the classroom and she was in the hallway having the camera ready, but sadly, he didn't do anything as what he's normally would do. But it took him maybe just 2 days. On a Wednesday afternoon, it happened. But sadly, Katie wasn't even there. Because since it didn't happen for the first 2 days from Monday to Tuesday, so she thought maybe that wasn't happening. So I told her it did happen. And she slammed her face herself with her hands like, man, I really missed it then. Let's try it tomorrow. And tomorrow, the next day, we did. She did record the whole thing. Now she's like, now we had all the evidence. No, we don't. What do you mean? We probably would need some more evidence. I probably would take up on the option to go to his house if we were studying more privately. Are you crazy? Said Katie to me. Yeah, but whatever much else can we do? It would be like his words against mine. And especially in the video. He would just claim that he just gave me back massage or shoulder massage. And according to the list in the part of the video, they said it kind of looked like that. So, but we needed some more proof. So, when I told Mr. Jameson that I was willing to have this private tutoring at his home a chance. So, I went to his home on the Friday, and Katie, luckily with David, was there. they actually recorded this on from the window but outside his home, and I have my phone on in my pocket recording the whole session. And once again, I'm not going to say exactly what it did say. It's not of any bad nature. It's just I still don't remember exactly all of it though, to be honest. But he then, during the class or this session, he asked if I was thirsty, so he went to get something to drink. I was expecting maybe a glass of water or something, but he came back with wine. Red wine, to be precise. But I told him that I'm only 17, I'm not even allowed to be drinking wine. And he told me just relax, it's just one glass of wine wouldn't even hurt. I told him I'm not feeling comfortable to drinking wine at this age at all. He tried to convince me multiple times, but I told him firmly, no, I'm not going to drink wine. I don't even like that. Even though I only tried one time a sip of wine and I didn't like the taste and still don't. So I just told them, if I want something, I just want a glass of water. And luckily though, he just sighed and said, all right. He went back and wet me a glass of water. But the next time when we do this, you could probably try something else, he said. I was like, maybe. So, luckily though, it wasn't another time. After this happened, he started to flirt with me and I felt more uncomfortable. And while he was doing this, David and Katie was recording this and the whole time, and they even had audio on it, luckily. And after the session was over, and I avoided all of his flirtations. And after that, he recognized that I didn't do anything to recognize it. So, there was only one small problem. Who would be telling this to otherwise? Well, we didn't know what to do next though. So, the next week, he did this again. He started to flirt with me in a class afterwards, just with me and him. And he then started to ask me if I wanted to go out with him. I told him, he's a teacher and I'm a student, and this is not allowed. He told me, we can always do it after school. Then this is probably perfectly fine. I still told him that firmly, despite if I was after this was off school, it's still not allowed. And he started to get angry. Like, how dare you even get me a chance, Laura? I mean, I'm a good-looking man, you're a good-looking girl. You should give me a chance at least. He once tried to flirt with me and I told him, no, I'm not interested. He started yelling and more and more like, how dare you? You are such ungrateful brat. Here I am, a good-looking man who is willing to give you a chance to be dating an older man. I told him I never done that, and I won't even never do that. And he then claimed I was flirting with him the whole time. I said, no, I have never flirted with you and never even would. But while this was going on, suddenly the door opened and there stood another teacher, Miss Taylor. She was the English teacher, one of my favorite teachers, and suddenly when she was standing there, she actually had the classroom next to the mat. She overheard all this happening commotion. She knew that time Miss Jameson did in fact use this old classroom to teach PT students after class is over. When she walked in, she then actually heard it frankly by the door just before she opened it, and she said, Miss Jameson, how dare you even try to do this to a student? He denied that he did anything. He said that I was the one who flirted with him and he tried to avoid any advances. I was sitting there, dumbfounded. But she said that she didn't believe him. In fact, she heard all the things from the classroom and other and when she went by the door. But then he said, even if you do report me, This will be against your word against. There will be your words against mine. He was referring to her and mine. I didn't mention this about the evidence, but the next day I did actually went with Katie to the principal and Miss Taylor as with all the things what happening. At first, the principal said that is only his words against mine, but then Katie said we have proof. We actually have this recording. He recorded it when he was in the classroom, and I told him that he even had offered me a private more class teachings at his personal home. That made his principal a little more worried. And Katie showed the recording on her phone, but including the audio. I also mentioned that he offered me wine during the whole time, and he was persistent, which I said no multiple times, and that was also captured on Katie's phone. The principal took the phone as evidence, and let's the long story short, Miss Jameson was arrested. Shortly after Miss Jameson was arrested, a lot of girls came forward along with Cassie to confirm that about his flirtatious behavior to them. And thanks to their testimony and the evidence that me and Katie and David had managed together, we were able to put him behind bars for a very long time. And in fact, I heard that he was given at least 60-year sentence. And that is what he really much deserved, considering at least what he did. And I actually heard some of the girls were considering even to quit high school or, in a worst case, even to commit suicide. But luckily though, they didn't. None of them. They actually got the help by therapist treatment, including myself. But even though I was not even so much long-term plan for him, but he belongs when he belongs right now. And when I was finished high school, I did actually end up dating David, and we're still together to this day and engaged, in fact. But not only that, ever since my senior year of high school, I wanted to be a teacher so I could help others, and that was I am studying to be. In fact, I hope to be a great one.